My name is Melissa Harrison, 29, and I never thought I'd feel vindicated by watching my sister's marriage implode on social media. The video showed Jessica flinching as Ryan's hand connected with her face, champagne glasses shattering. I wasn't invited to their wedding, cast as the jealous sister who didn't support their relationship. Now my phone won't stop buzzing with messages from family who previously sided with her. After years of being cast as the family villain, I was suddenly the only one who saw Ryan for who he really was. Before I dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. This journey taught me so much about family loyalty and trusting your instincts. If you've ever had that gut feeling something wasn't right but everyone said you were overreacting, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more stories about family dynamics and the complicated path to healing. Now, let me take you back to where this all began. Jessica and I were born just 2 years apart, close enough to share clothes but far enough to have separate friend groups. Growing up, the dynamic was clear to everyone except perhaps our parents. Jessica was the golden child, and I was the scapegoat. Everything she did gleamed with perfection in our parents' eyes. Her B+ was celebrated while my A was expected. Her participation trophy deserved a special dinner. My first place ribbon was just doing what you should. Despite this imbalance, we were actually close as children. Jessica would sneak into my room at night, and we'd build blanket forts with flashlights, trading secrets and dreams. I wanted to be a writer. She wanted to be a dancer. We promised to live next door to each other when we grew up. Everything changed in high school. Jessica entered her sophomore year with a new awareness of her social currency. Suddenly, our easy companionship twisted into something competitive. The first sign was small. She borrowed my favorite sweater without asking and accidentally spilled something on it. Then she began dropping my friends and adopting them as her own, slowly reshaping her identity to eclipse mine. The boyfriend stealing started junior year. I had been dating Tyler Martin for 3 months, my first real boyfriend. We were planning to go to winter formal together when Jessica suddenly took an interest in him. 3 weeks later, they were official, and I was left dateless and heartbroken. When I confronted her, she just shrugged and said, "He liked me better. That's not my fault." But prom was the real betrayal. Jessica was a senior, already accepted to college, while I was a sophomore who had been quietly dating Alex Preston for 6 months. He was kind, thoughtful, and perfectly happy to attend sophomore prom with me, rather than the more glamorous senior event. Until Jessica decided she needed a backup date when her boyfriend came down with mono 2 days before senior prom. I still remember finding them practicing dancing in our living room, Jessica laughing as she adjusted his tie. "Don't worry," she told me with artificial sweetness. "You'll have other proms." My parents thought I was being dramatic when I locked myself in my room. "Your sister needed someone last minute," my mother said. Family helps family. That pattern continued through college. I went to State University, while Jessica bounced between 3 different schools, changing majors each time. I established distance for self-preservation, coming home for holidays, but keeping conversations surface level. Meanwhile, I built a marketing career with a digital agency, working my way up from intern to senior account manager within 5 years. Jessica drifted between jobs, retail, administrative work, a brief stint as a yoga instructor. Nothing held her interest for long. Her relationships followed a similar pattern. Intense beginnings followed by dramatic endings. Despite our history, I still tried to help when these breakups left her devastated. I'd listen to her sob about how Craig was emotionally unavailable or Derek couldn't handle a strong woman, never mentioning that I'd seen the red flags from day one. Then came Ryan Thompson. They met at a charity auction 3 years ago, where Jessica was working as event staff and Ryan was a donor. He swept in with his investment banker salary and country club connections. The first time I met him at Sunday dinner, something felt off. While everyone else was captivated by his stories about celebrity clients and market predictions, I noticed how his eyes constantly tracked Jessica's movements, how he subtly redirected conversations she was leading, how his compliments always contained tiny barbs. "Jessica's finally getting her life together," he said, squeezing her shoulder in what looked like affection, but made her wince slightly. "She's been a bit directionless, But we're working on that. My parents beamed, completely missing Jessica's discomfort. They were too enchanted by Ryan's promise to help her find her path. I caught her eyes across the table, but she quickly looked away. At that family dinner, I watched Ryan casually rearrange the food on Jessica's plate, removing the roll she'd just taken. "Remember your carb limits, babe?" he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. When my father asked about Jessica's plan to take photography classes, Ryan smoothly answered before she could open her mouth. "We've discussed it, but I think real estate licensing makes more sense financially. Photography can remain a hobby." Jessica nodded along, a shadow of the spirited sister I once knew. Everyone else saw a supportive boyfriend. I saw a puppet master. I'll never forget the first time I formally met Ryan Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. Jessica had mentioned him in passing phone calls, but this was his grand introduction to the family. He arrived with an expensive bottle of wine for my father and a designer scarf for my mother. "Just a little something I picked up on my business trip to Milan," he said casually, as if everyone regularly shopped internationally. My parents, Thomas and Diane Harrison, were immediately smitten. Ryan had done his homework, somehow knowing my father's passion for vintage baseball cards and engaging him in an informed conversation about a recent auction. He complimented my mother's interior design choices with specific observations that made her blush with pleasure. "You have such a beautiful family," Ryan said, his arm possessively around Jessica's waist. "Jessica talks about you all constantly." I might have believed it if I hadn't noticed Jessica checking her phone, then quickly putting it away when Ryan glanced at her. It was subtle, but unmistakable. She looked nervous. Later, during kitchen cleanup, Ryan appeared just as Jessica was showing me photos from their recent trip. "Scrolling through your phone again, babe?" he asked lightly, but there was an edge to his voice. "You know I worry about your screen time." He reached for her phone, and she handed it over without hesitation. He pocketed it, kissed her forehead, and left. The exchange lasted maybe 10 seconds, but the implicit control was obvious. "Since when does he monitor your phone usage?" I asked. Jessica shrugged. "He's right, I'm on it too much. Besides, he pays the bill." That night, I pulled Jessica aside for a private conversation in my old bedroom, keeping my voice casual as I asked, "So, things with Ryan seem serious. How's it going, really?" "It's amazing," she said with practiced enthusiasm. "He takes such good care of me. I've never been with someone so organized and successful." "You seem different around him," I ventured carefully. "Less. You." Her expression hardened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You defer to him on everything. The Jessica I know has opinions. That's mature relationships, Mel. Compromise. You'd know that if yours lasted longer than 6 months." Her words stung, but I persisted. "Does he always check your phone like that?" Jessica's eyes flashed with rare anger. "You're just jealous. I found someone who loves me enough to care what I do." She stormed out, ending our conversation. Over the next few months, I watched Jessica's social circle shrink. First, she missed our cousin Amy's baby shower because Ryan had a work event. Then she canceled our monthly sister lunch 3 times in a row. When we did meet, she seemed distracted, checking the time frequently. "Ryan likes dinner on the table by 7, she explained, gathering her things at 5:30, despite our restaurant being only 15 minutes from her apartment. Meanwhile, Ryan became increasingly involved in family gatherings, positioning himself as the reasonable one in any discussion. When Jessica mentioned wanting to visit our grandmother in Florida, Ryan interjected, "We've discussed this, honey. Q3 is too busy for me to take time off, and I don't think it's wise for you to go alone with your anxiety." I didn't know Jessica had anxiety. The financial control began subtly. Jessica mentioned that Ryan had helped set up a joint account because she was bad with money. By Christmas, she was asking him for permission before buying gifts. "It's actually really helpful," she insisted when I questioned it. "Ryan understands investing and budgeting. I'm learning so much." What she was learning, it seemed to me, was dependency. The vibrant, opinionated sister who once spontaneously drove to Canada for a weekend was now second-guessing her coffee order. My parents, however, saw only improvements. Ryan has been such a stabilizing influence, my mother gushed. Jessica is finally growing up. He's the best thing that ever happened to her, my father agreed. Successful, responsible, a real catch. I stopped voicing my concerns after being repeatedly shut down. But I couldn't stop noticing Jessica's voice getting softer, her clothes more conservative, her opinions aligning perfectly with Ryan's. Something was wrong, and I seemed to be the only one who could see it. The breaking point came at Jessica's 31st birthday dinner at our parents' house. I'd noticed Jessica had been increasingly distant, but family birthdays were non-negotiable in the Harrison household, so I arrived with a carefully selected gift, a leather-bound journal with her initials, something personal that Ryan couldn't control. The evening started typically enough. Mom made Jessica's favorite lasagna, Dad opened a special bottle of wine, and conversation flowed pleasantly, if superficially. Then, as Mom brought out the cake, Ryan stood up dramatically, tapping his glass. "I have an announcement," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Jessica and I are engaged." The table erupted in excitement except for two people, me and, strangely, Jessica. While everyone rushed to congratulate them, I watched my sister's face. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and more concerning, she looked surprised. Not the kind of surprise when a secret plan is finally revealed, but genuine shock, as if this was news to her too. "When did this happen?" Mom asked, already examining the massive diamond on Jessica's finger. "I actually proposed last weekend," Ryan answered smoothly. "We wanted to keep it our special secret for a few days." Jessica nodded along mechanically, but something was very wrong. As the celebration continued, I noticed her adjusting the sparkling bracelet on her wrist repeatedly. During a moment when attention had shifted to Dad opening more wine, I saw why beneath the bracelet was a yellowish-purple bruise. "Jess, help me with dessert plates?" I asked, needing to get her alone. In the kitchen, I gently touched her arm. "What happened to your wrist?" Her reaction was immediate. She pulled away, adjusting the bracelet. "Nothing." I bumped it on the cabinet. "Jessica, I know what bruises look like." "It's nothing, Melissa. Drop it." Her voice had an edge I rarely heard. "Is Ryan hurting you?" I whispered, heart pounding. That's when Jessica exploded. "Why can't you ever be happy for me? Every relationship I have, you find something wrong with it. Because I care about you. That doesn't look like a cabinet bruise, and you didn't even know he was announcing your engagement tonight." "You don't know anything," Jessica hissed. "You're so perfect with your steady job and your independence." "Well, not everyone wants your lonely life." I stepped back, stung. My lonely life? At least in my lonely life, no one leaves bruises on me. What neither of us realized was that Ryan had been standing in the doorway. His face showed concern, but his eyes were cold as ice. "Everything okay in here?" he asked, voice gentle but somehow threatening. Jessica immediately transformed, smiling brightly. "Just sister stuff. We're fine." "Doesn't sound fine," Ryan said. "Sounds like Melissa is upset about our engagement." Before I could respond, Ryan had an arm around Jessica, guiding her back to the dining room. "Everyone, I think we need to address something," he announced. "Melissa seems to have some concerns about our relationship." What followed was a masterclass in manipulation. Ryan expressed worry about my jealousy issues, referenced past boyfriends of Jessica's I hadn't approved of, and even brought up childhood instances when I'd been competitive with my sister. He painted me as unstable, resentful, and unable to celebrate Jessica's happiness. "I've tried so hard to connect with you, Melissa," he said with practiced sincerity, "but you seem determined to find fault with me." My parents and extended family, Uncle Dave and Aunt Carol, were there too, looked at me with disappointment. Even my father, who usually stayed out of sister squabbles, seemed convinced. "Melissa," my mother said gently, "can't you just be happy for your sister?" "I want to be," I insisted, feeling increasingly cornered. "But something isn't right here." Jessica stood up, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this anymore. You've always tried to control my life, always thought you knew better than me. If you can't support my relationship, then maybe you shouldn't be part of my wedding." The room fell silent. I looked around at my family all firmly on Jessica and Ryan's side and realized I couldn't win. I grabbed my purse and left without another word. Over the next few weeks, I tried repeatedly to reach Jessica. I sent texts that went unanswered, left voicemails that were never returned, and even wrote an email explaining my concerns calmly and rationally. The only response came from Ryan, using Jessica's phone. Jessica needs space from your toxic influence. Please respect her wishes. Eventually, I received a formal text from Jessica. I think it's best if we take a break from communication. I need people who support my choices in my life right now. That was the moment I realized I had been completely cut out. Not just from the wedding, but from my sister's life entirely. As months passed, the wedding plans unfolded across social media like a play I wasn't allowed to attend. My Instagram feed filled with photos of venue tours, cake tastings, and bridal shower preparations, all featuring my mother, female cousins, and Jessica's friends, but conspicuously missing me, the only sister of the bride. The official explanation given to curious relatives was diplomatic but cutting. Jessica wants a drama-free day. My parents called once to check if I would reconsider my position and apologized to Jessica and Ryan, making it clear where the blame lay in their minds. "We're not asking you to be in the wedding party," my mother said carefully. "Just to support your sister on her special day." "By support, you mean pretend I don't see what's happening," I replied. My father sighed heavily. "Melissa, not every relationship has to match your standards. Ryan makes her happy. Isn't that enough?" The conversation ended with no resolution, and the wedding planning continued without me. The pain of exclusion was deeper than I expected. It wasn't just missing the ceremony that hurt, but watching from the periphery as my extended family posted excited updates about dress fittings and bachelor divided by bachelorette parties. Aunt Carol shared photos of mother-daughter wedding shopping with my mom and Jessica. Cousin Amber posted about being honored to stand beside the bride where her sister should have been. That last one stung particularly hard. After 6 months of this emotional distance, I made a professional decision that served a personal purpose too. My marketing agency offered me a promotion to lead their new Denver office. The opportunity was too good to pass up professionally, and the chance to put physical distance between myself and the wedding drama felt like a gift from the universe. Moving to Denver became my focus, finding an apartment, planning the office launch, immersing myself in a new city. I built a support system through work colleagues and a community pottery class where I met Emma, a graphic designer with a similar family history, and Keith, a physical therapist whose calm presence and thoughtful advice became invaluable. I also started therapy with Dr. Lancaster, who helped me understand the complex dynamics of my family. "You were the truth teller in a system that prioritizes appearances," she explained during one session. "That's a thankless role, but an important one." When the actual wedding day arrived in June, I had prepared a self-care strategy. Instead of sitting home scrolling through inevitable wedding posts, I joined a hiking group ascending one of Colorado's famous 14ers. The physical exertion, stunning views, and company of strangers who knew nothing of my family drama proved therapeutic. That evening, as I soaked my aching muscles in a bath, my phone buzzed with a text from Cousin Amber. "Wish you were here. Something feels off with Ryan. He's been controlling everything down to what color eyeshadow Jessica should wear." I put the phone down, not wanting to get pulled back in. But an hour later, Amber called. "I probably shouldn't say anything," she began hesitantly, but there was an incident at the rehearsal dinner. Ryan got angry because Jessica was talking to his college roommate for too long. He grabbed her arm pretty hard and pulled her away. Everyone pretended not to notice, but it was uncomfortable. "Did you talk to Jessica about it?" I asked. "I tried. She said I misunderstood, and Ryan was just excited to introduce her to someone else." I thanked Amber for telling me, but reminded myself of my boundary. Jessica had made her choice, and I had to respect it, even while disagreeing. The next day, social media exploded with wedding pictures. Jessica looking beautiful, but somehow diminished in an elaborate gown that didn't match her usual style. Ryan beaming triumphantly beside her, my parents glowing with pride. The captions proclaimed them the perfect couple and heralded the start of their fairy tale. Meanwhile, Amber's texts told a different story. Ryan micromanaging the photographer, Jessica asking permission before having a second glass of champagne, tense whispers when they thought no one was looking. The wedding weekend passed, and I felt both heartbroken and relieved to be 800 miles away from the spectacle. I sent a simple text to Jessica. "Congratulations. I'm here if you ever need me." It went unanswered, but I hadn't expected otherwise. Are you still with me on this journey? If you've ever been excluded from a significant family event, drop a comment below. I know how isolating that feeling can be, and sometimes just knowing others have walked that path helps. This next part is where everything changed, and I still remember exactly where I was standing when my world turned upside down. 3 months after the wedding, I had established a comfortable routine in Denver. Mornings at the local coffee shop reviewing marketing proposals, days leading my small but dynamic team, evenings exploring the city or unwinding with Emma and Keith. The distance had provided perspective, and while the situation with Jessica remained painful, it no longer dominated my thoughts daily. Then came the night that changed everything. It was nearly midnight on a Tuesday when I was scrolling through social media before bed. A notification appeared from a former college classmate. "Isn't this your sister's wedding?" The link led to a 37-second video, already gaining traction across platforms with the hashtag number Wedding Nightmare. My stomach dropped as I pressed play. The footage, clearly shot by a guest at the reception, showed Jessica and Ryan in what appeared to be an intense discussion near the gift table. Jessica looked upset, gesturing with her hands while Ryan maintained a rigid posture. Suddenly, his expression changed, a flash of something dark crossing his features before his right hand swung upward and connected with Jessica's face. The slap wasn't theatrical or exaggerated. It was quick, controlled, and deliberate. Jessica stumbled backward, knocking over champagne glasses. Gasps were audible from nearby guests. Then Ryan was all concern, reaching for her while saying something the microphone didn't catch. The video ended with Jessica frozen in shock, a red mark forming on her cheek as Ryan ushered her away from onlookers. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone. The physical reaction was immediate nausea rising in my throat, heart pounding, a cold sweat breaking out across my skin. The validation of my suspicions brought no satisfaction, only horror and guilt. Guilt that I had been right. Guilt that I hadn't found a way to stop this. Guilt that some small, terrible part of me felt vindicated. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. First came the accusatory messages from family members. "Did you post this?" From my cousin Mark. "How could you humiliate your sister publicly?" From Aunt Carol. They assumed I was behind the leak, that this was somehow my revenge for being excluded. Then came a private message from Amber. "It's worse than the video shows. They tried to play it off as him swatting a bee by her face. But everyone saw what happened. Your parents are in damage control mode. Jessica's not answering anyone's calls." Ryan was already on the offensive, releasing a statement claiming the footage had been edited to remove context and calling it a misunderstanding during an emotional day. He insisted he had been reaching to adjust Jessica's hair when the camera caught an unfortunate angle. Jessica remained conspicuously silent on all platforms. By morning, the video had been viewed over 2 million times. News outlets were picking it up, using blurred versions while discussing domestic violence warning signs. Wedding vendors were quietly removing Jessica and Ryan's photos from their portfolios. The comments section was a battlefield of speculation and judgment. My parents called at 7 a.m., their voices strained. "You need to help fix this situation," my mother said without preamble. "People are contacting us. It's humiliating." "Fix what exactly?" I asked. "The fact that Ryan hit Jessica, or just that people saw it happen?" "You don't understand the context," my father argued. Ryan explained everything. "Jessica isn't even upset about it anymore." "Have you actually spoken to Jessica, heard her side without Ryan present?" The silence answered my question. "I want to help Jessica," I said firmly. "But I need to hear from her directly, not through Ryan or you. She's embarrassed enough without your 'I told you so' attitude. my mother snapped before hanging up. I spent the day distracted, checking my phone constantly for any message from Jessica. None came. The video continued gaining traction, with domestic violence organizations now using it as an educational tool, pointing out the controlling behavior visible in Ryan's body language before the slap. That evening, I made a decision. I wouldn't publicly comment on the video or contact Jessica again directly. Instead, I texted Amber, "If Jessica reaches out or needs somewhere safe to go, I'm here. No questions asked, no judgment." Amber promised to pass along the message if the opportunity arose. Then I waited, watching from afar as Ryan launched a campaign to discredit the video. Jessica remained silent, and my family scrambled to minimize what couldn't be unseen. A week later, my doorbell rang at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't expecting anyone, and Denver still felt new enough that late-night visitors were concerning rather than welcome. Cautiously, I checked the peephole and felt my heart stop. Jessica stood on my doorstep, a rolling suitcase beside her, wearing large sunglasses despite the late hour. She looked smaller somehow, hunched against the October chill in a coat too light for Colorado's autumn. I yanked the door open. For a moment, we just stared at each other, 3 months of silence and years of complicated history hanging between us. Then her lower lip trembled, and I pulled her inside without a word. In my living room, Jessica stood awkwardly, still wearing her sunglasses. I didn't press her to remove them, instead asking gently, "Can I get you anything? Tea? Water? Something stronger?" "Water would be good," she replied, her voice hoarse as if she hadn't used it in days. When I returned with the glass, she had taken off her coat but not the sunglasses. We sat facing each other, the silence stretching uncomfortably, until I finally said, "I'm glad you're here, Jess. However you found me." "Amber," she admitted. "She gave me your address, said you'd told her I was welcome anytime." I nodded, waiting. Jessica took a sip of water, then slowly, deliberately removed her sunglasses. I couldn't contain my sharp intake of breath. Her left eye was swollen, a deep purple bruise extending from her eyebrow to cheekbone. "The video wasn't the first time," she said quietly. "Just the first time anyone saw." Something broke inside me, rage and grief colliding, as I moved to sit beside her on the couch. "Jessica, I'm so sorry. That was all it took." She collapsed against me, sobbing with an intensity that suggested months, perhaps years of suppressed emotions. I held her, my own tears falling silently, as she finally told me everything. The controlling behavior had started subtly suggestions about her clothes, monitoring her spending for budgeting purposes, gentle criticism of her friends. By the time they were engaged, Ryan had isolated her from most of her support system, convinced her that her career aspirations were impractical, and begun tracking her whereabouts through her phone. "He told me you were trying to ruin our relationship because you were jealous," she confessed between sobs, "that you'd always been competitive and couldn't stand seeing me happy." After a while, I believed him. The physical abuse began 6 months before the wedding, a shove, during an argument that Ryan immediately apologized for, blaming work stress. Then came accidental grips that left bruises, intimidating physical posturing, and eventually, deliberate hits carefully placed where clothing would cover. "The wedding slap wasn't the first," Jessica explained, "just the first one people saw. He was furious that I'd been talking to guests without him, said I was flirting with his college friend." She shuddered. "Afterward, he convinced everyone it was nothing. My own husband hit me in front of 200 people, and somehow I was the one apologizing by the end of the night. I fought back the urge to say I knew it or I tried to warn you. Instead, I asked, 'What made you leave now?'" Jessica explained that after the video went viral, Ryan's public charm offensive was matched by private escalation. When social media attention didn't immediately die down, his rage turned frightening. "He threw a glass at the wall, just inches from my head," she whispered. "Said if I'd been a better wife at the wedding, none of this would have happened." That's when I knew next time it wouldn't miss. She'd waited until Ryan left for a 3-day business trip, then packed essential documents and a single suitcase. She'd withdrawn the maximum daily limit from their joint account before he could freeze it, bought a plane ticket using a friend's credit card to avoid tracking, and flown to Denver with no real plan beyond finding me. I didn't know if you'd even want to see me, she admitted. After everything, the way I treated you, cutting you out. You're my sister, Jess, I said firmly. Whatever happened between us, I'm here now. For the first time, a genuine smile flickered across her face. Remember when we used to build blanket forts as kids? You always said our sister bond was unbreakable. That night, I made up the spare bedroom, lending Jessica pajamas and toiletries. As I was leaving her to rest, she caught my hand. Ryan doesn't know I'm here. No one does, except Amber. But he'll figure it out eventually. We'll deal with that when it comes, I promised. For tonight, just get some sleep. You're safe. The next morning over coffee, glimpses of our old dynamic emerged. Jessica teased me about my mismatched mugs. I rolled my eyes at her meticulous stirring technique. For moments, it felt like we were teenagers again, before competitions and boyfriends complicated everything. But reality couldn't stay at bay for long. I need to file a police report, Jessica said, staring into her coffee. And a restraining order. And divorce papers. The enormity of these tasks seemed to overwhelm her. We'll take it one step at a time, I replied. And you don't have to do any of it alone. That moment of quiet solidarity marked the beginning of our painful but healing journey forward. Jessica would stay in my spare room indefinitely. There would be legal battles ahead, family confrontations, and Ryan's inevitable retaliation. But sitting across from my sister, watching her courage emerge from beneath layers of control and abuse, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope for our relationship. Ryan's discovery of Jessica's whereabouts came faster than we'd anticipated. 3 days after her arrival, Jessica's phone, which she'd turned back on briefly to check messages, exploded with notifications. 27 missed calls, 46 text messages, and voicemails that escalated from concern to rage. We sat in my living room as Jessica played one on speaker, her hand trembling. You think you can humiliate me like this? Running away like some victim? After everything I've done for you? Your pathetic family knows exactly what kind of unstable person you are. Get back home now, or you'll regret it, Jessica. There's your true husband, I said quietly. Not the charming version everyone else sees. Jessica nodded, a strange calm settling over her. I need everyone to hear this. What we didn't expect was our parents' reaction. When Jessica called to let them know she was safe with me, their immediate response wasn't relief but pressure. Ryan is beside himself with worry, our mother said. He said you left without explanation after a small argument. He's been calling us constantly. It wasn't a small argument, Mom. He threw a glass at my head. I'm sure he didn't mean to. Stop. Jessica's voice was firmer than I'd heard in years. I'm not coming back. I'm filing for divorce. The silence on the other end stretched until our father took the phone. Jessica, every marriage has rough patches. Ryan admits he's made mistakes, but he wants to work through this. He's even found a counselor for you both. For us both? Jessica's laugh was hollow. Like we both have a problem? Well, sweetie, relationships take two people. Jessica hung up. She stared at the phone in disbelief before looking at me. They're still defending him. After everything. Over the next week, our extended family divided into clear factions. Aunt Carol and Uncle Dave sided firmly with our parents, suggesting Jessica was having some kind of breakdown and should work on her marriage. Cousin Amber, having witnessed Ryan's behavior firsthand, supported Jessica completely. Others vacillated, uncomfortable taking sides in what they viewed as a private matter. Meanwhile, Jessica and I were establishing a routine. Mornings at the police station, filing reports, and meeting with a domestic violence advocate. Afternoons with a divorce attorney who specialized in abusive situations. Evenings researching security measures and changing Jessica's digital footprint to prevent tracking. Ryan's campaign to reclaim his wife began with what he thought was his strongest ally, our mother. She called daily with updates on Ryan's emotional state. He was devastated. He was seeking help. He'd realized his mistakes. When guilt tactics failed, he switched to charm, sending flowers to my apartment with notes about healing our family divisions. When those efforts met silence, the mask slipped further. Ryan contacted Jessica's friends, spinning a story about her mental health crisis and how I was enabling her delusions. He reached out to her former employers, claiming concern about her stability. He even called my marketing agency, asking to speak to me about my troubled sister, forcing me to have an uncomfortable conversation with my boss. The turning point came when one of my neighbors reported a man matching Ryan's description, asking questions about my apartment. The next day, Jessica spotted him in the parking lot of my building as we returned from meeting her lawyer. I'll never forget the confrontation. Ryan approached with practiced concern on his face, hands extended placatingly. "Jessica, thank God. I've been so worried. Let's talk about this like adults." Jessica froze beside me, her breathing shallow. I stepped slightly in front of her. "She doesn't want to talk to you, Ryan. There's a restraining order being processed. You need to leave." His expression flickered concern to anger and back so quickly an untrained eye might miss it. "This is between me and my wife. You've done enough damage to our relationship, Melissa." "I know what you did," I said steadily. "The police know too. Leave now, or I'm calling them." Ryan's attention shifted back to Jessica, his voice softening to the manipulative tone I recognized from family gatherings. "Jess, baby, I know I've made mistakes, but running away isn't the answer. We took vows, remember? For better or worse." Jessica had been silent, seemingly transfixed by his presence. Then something remarkable happened. She straightened her posture and met his gaze directly. "The worse isn't supposed to be caused by you, Ryan. I'm not coming back. Not ever." Ryan's facade crumbled completely, his face contorted with rage as he stepped toward us. "You ungrateful bitch! You were nothing before me. Nothing!" I already had 911 dialed on my phone. One more step, and I pressed call. We stood in a tense standoff, Jessica's hand gripping mine with surprising strength. Finally, Ryan stepped back, his expression chilling. "You'll regret choosing her over me," he spat. "Both of you will." As he stormed toward his car, Jessica trembled beside me, but remained upright. She had witnessed what I'd seen all along, the monster beneath the charming mask, and in that moment, I knew she would never go back to him. "He's not going to stop," she whispered as we watched his car screech away. "No," I agreed. "But neither are we." 2 days after Ryan's confrontation at my apartment, Jessica received an email from a college friend. "Is everything okay? Ryan's posting some concerning things about you online." We discovered Ryan had launched a calculated smear campaign. On his social media, he'd shared artfully filtered photos of their happy days together, alongside vague but pointed references to Jessica's struggles with reality and his heartbreak over mental health destroying our marriage. He portrayed himself as the devoted husband desperately trying to help his troubled wife, who had been influenced by her estranged sister's paranoia. Jessica sat stone-faced as we scrolled through the comments. Friends and colleagues offering support to Ryan, acquaintances expressing shock and sympathy. Even our own relatives, Uncle Dave and Aunt Carol, publicly commenting with prayer emojis and offers to help bring Jessica home. "He's rewriting our entire relationship," Jessica whispered, and people believe him. That evening, we contacted a domestic violence organization for guidance. Their advocate, Marianne, had seen this pattern countless times. "Abusers control the narrative," she explained. "They've been managing public perception throughout the relationship. It's why so many people ask, why didn't she just leave? They never saw what happened behind closed doors." "So what do I do?" Jessica asked. "Let him destroy my reputation too?" Marianne smiled gently. "You tell your truth, on your terms. When you're ready." For 3 days, Jessica worked with Marianne and a counselor to prepare her statement. She gathered evidence, photographs of bruises she'd hidden over the years, screenshots of Ryan's controlling texts, the police report from our parking lot confrontation. Most damning was the unedited wedding video Amber had secretly obtained from the videographer, who'd been horrified by what he'd captured. On a Sunday morning, when Ryan typically posted his most heart-wrenching missing my wife content, Jessica reclaimed her voice. She shared a powerful statement across all platforms, accompanied by carefully selected evidence. "For 3 years, I've lived in fear. What began as love became control, then intimidation, and finally violence. The viral video from my wedding wasn't an isolated incident or a misunderstanding. It was one public moment in a pattern of abuse I've hidden out of shame and fear. Today, I'm choosing truth over silence, healing over pretending, and myself over the image of a perfect marriage. I'm safe. I'm filing for divorce. And I'm finally free. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Friends who had initially sided with Ryan reached out with apologies. Domestic violence survivors shared messages of solidarity. Several of Ryan's ex-girlfriends contacted Jessica privately with eerily similar stories of controlling behavior that had escalated over time. Most importantly, the statement forced our family to take definitive sides. My parents' initial reaction was defensive. How could this have happened without them noticing? How could Jessica not have told them? But as more evidence emerged and Ryan's behavior became increasingly erratic, even they couldn't maintain their denial. I didn't want to believe it, my mother admitted during a tear-filled video call. Ryan was everything we wanted for Jessica: successful, charming, stable. Accepting that he hurt her means accepting that we missed it, that we encouraged her to stay with someone who was hurting her. You saw what he wanted you to see, I explained, without absolving them completely. We all did. The difference is some of us questioned it. A month after arriving at my apartment, Jessica found her own place nearby, a studio apartment with excellent security and no social media footprint. We maintained daily contact, having dinner together several times a week. The legal proceedings advanced steadily, with the restraining order formalized and divorce papers filed. Ryan's attempts to salvage his reputation backfired spectacularly when two colleagues came forward about his aggressive behavior at work. His carefully constructed image crumbled further when he violated the restraining order by sending Jessica a threatening email, resulting in a police warning. Meanwhile, Jessica and I began addressing our own complicated history in weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Lancaster. The conversations were difficult, but necessary. You did try to warn me, Jessica acknowledged during one particularly emotional session. I was so angry because deep down, I knew you were right. It was easier to cut you out than face what was happening, and I could have found better ways to express my concerns, I admitted. I was so focused on being right that I forgot to just be your sister. Our relationship with our parents remained strained but healing. They flew out to Denver for a weekend, meeting with Jessica's counselor to better understand domestic violence and their own enabling role. My father, never one for emotional conversations, pulled me aside before leaving. You were the only one who saw it, he said gruffly. We should have listened. As Christmas approached, the first holiday since Jessica's escape, we decided to host a small gathering in my apartment rather than returning home. Amber flew in from Chicago, and Emma and Keith joined us as chosen family. Our parents visited after New Year's instead, respecting our need to establish new traditions. Jessica, who had started volunteering with the domestic violence organization that helped her, found purpose in sharing her story with other survivors. If I can help one person recognize the warning signs I missed, it's worth it, she told me, as we decorated a slightly lopsided Christmas tree. When Ryan made one final desperate attempt to contact Jessica through a mutual friend, claiming he'd changed and wanted to apologize in person, she responded with newfound clarity, "The only thing I need from Ryan is his signature on our divorce papers." That evening, Jessica and I made a pact over glasses of wine. No matter what happened in our lives moving forward, we would prioritize our relationship. No man, no misunderstanding, no family pressure would ever come between us again. Sisters before misters, Jessica said with a smile that finally reached her eyes. Especially abusive misters, I added, clinking my glass against hers. The red rocks of Sedona glowed in the morning light as Jessica and I sipped coffee on our cabin porch. We'd chosen this healing trip to mark 1 year since she'd appeared on my doorstep, 1 year of rebuilding, recovering, and reclaiming her life. Remember when we promised to visit the Grand Canyon together in high school? Jessica asked, pulling her cardigan tighter against the October chill. And Mom said we'd never manage a trip without fighting, I laughed. Clearly, she underestimated us. The transformation in Jessica over the past year was remarkable. The timid, permission-seeking woman who'd arrived in Denver had blossomed into someone reminiscent of her younger self, but with new depth and confidence. Her natural auburn hair had grown back, replacing the platinum blonde Ryan had preferred. She'd traded restrictive pencil skirts for comfortable jeans and flowing tops that suited her personal style. Most significantly, Jessica had found her calling. What began as volunteer work with domestic violence survivors had evolved into a full-time advocacy position with a national organization. She traveled to colleges speaking about relationship red flags and had recently been asked to consult on a documentary about intimate partner violence. I never would have pictured this life a year ago, Jessica reflected, watching a hummingbird dart around a nearby feeder. I thought I'd lost everything when I left Ryan. My marriage, my security, my future. I didn't realize I was actually finding myself again. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, after Ryan finally recognized that his delay tactics were only damaging him professionally. Jessica had emerged with a fair settlement and, more importantly, her freedom. Our relationship with our parents remained a work in progress. They'd made genuine efforts to understand their role in enabling Ryan and dismissing my concerns. My mother had joined a support group for families of domestic violence survivors, while my father expressed his regrets through practical assistance helping Jessica navigate the financial aspects of her divorce and sending care packages to both of us. Dad called yesterday, Jessica mentioned. Wanted to know if we'd consider coming home for Thanksgiving this year. We exchanged knowing looks. While our relationship with our parents had improved, we remained protective of our boundaries. Maybe Christmas instead, I suggested. Shorter visit, more structured. Jessica nodded. With our own hotel rooms. The viral wedding video, which had initially been such a source of humiliation, had found purpose with Jessica's permission. Her advocacy organization used edited portions in training materials, showing how abuse can happen in plain sight when people don't know what to look for. It's still surreal, Jessica admitted, knowing thousands of people have watched one of the worst moments of my life. But if it helps someone recognize abuse before it escalates, I can live with that. As for Ryan, he'd moved to Chicago after his investment firm quietly asked for his resignation. According to mutual connections, he was dating again, but his reputation had taken an irreparable hit. Denver had become too uncomfortable for him after Jessica's Truth campaign inspired 2 other women to come forward with similar experiences. Heard anything from Ryan lately? I asked carefully. Jessica shook her head. Not since the papers were signed. His lawyer does all communication now. She smiled slightly. I think he finally realized I'm not coming back. We both dated casually now, Jessica, more cautiously than me. Understandably. She'd recently mentioned a trauma-informed therapist named Mark she'd met at a conference, though she was taking things extremely slowly. I had been seeing Keith, my pottery class friend, for about 4 months. Both men understood the importance of the sister relationship in our lives and respected our weekly dinner tradition as non-negotiable. The sun climbed higher as we sat in comfortable silence. Finally, Jessica turned to me. You tried to warn me even when I pushed you away, she said softly. I'll never forget that you were there when I had nowhere else to go. That's what sisters do, I replied, squeezing her hand. The real ones. Anyway, Jessica touched the small tattoo on her wrist. Truth emerges in its own time, covering what had once been a scar from Ryan's grip. I used to think family meant blood loyalty no matter what. Now I understand it's actually about honesty, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. Later that day, as we hiked among the stunning red formations, we took a photograph together at sunrise. 2 sisters with their arms around each other, shadows behind them, facing the light ahead. The image captured everything words couldn't. Our journey through darkness, our bond strengthened rather than broken by adversity, and our shared future, uncertain but facing it together. That evening, making plans for the holidays with our newly established boundaries firmly in place, I realized that family bonds truly were both fragile and unbreakable. Fragile enough to be damaged by secrets and control, yet resilient enough to heal when nurtured with truth and respect. Ready for whatever comes next? I asked Jessica as we clinked glasses over dinner. Her smile, genuine, strong, and free from fear, was answer enough. If my story has resonated with you in any way, I'd be so grateful if you'd share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up for a difficult truth when everyone around you refused to see it? Or perhaps you've experienced that moment when family dynamics suddenly shift and reveal their true nature? Your experiences matter, and sharing them might help someone else feeling alone in their journey. Please subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories about family healing and resilience. I've learned so much this past year that I'm hoping to share. And if this video helped you recognize warning signs in your own life or someone else's, passing it along could make a real difference. Like and share if you believe in the power of sisterhood and truth. Thank you for witnessing our story. Remember, sometimes the families we build are as important as the ones we're born into, and it's never too late to stand in your truth. Take care of yourselves and each other.